Good morning, everyone. This is Dan McGrew with iT2, back for our podcast. We talk digital transformation and all things SAP. And I'm very excited this morning to have with me Mike Wynn with Perpetua Advisors. Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Morning, Dan. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. So, Mike, if you would give the audience a little bit about your background and just what your breadth of experience is, please.
Sure. I'm one of the principals of a fractional CIO firm called Perpetua Advisors, and in that role in that company, we serve the lower mid market, so companies 50 to 250 million with strategic IT leadership. I have a long background in IT, progressive from started out as a programmer. I won't give the years, a while ago, all the way up through CIO, and then jumped out and started Perpetua, really the first generation of it, about 2011, and then Perpetua was officially formed in 2015.
Fantastic. Well, let's get started. So, Mike, the most exciting thing for me is that, we as a consulting company, iT2, we're an SAP provider, and we're a consulting company that helps customers with their SAP needs. But many times, most times, even before it ever gets to the SAP level, the executives go through the process of determining, what are they going to do, digital transformation, what's that going to look like? And I know you have a ton of experience in that. So from the days when we've talked in the past, from way back in the beginning, from even before Y2K, people have continued to try to move the needle to get more digital and improve their processes and so forth. Can you talk to us a little bit about what you've seen and what your thoughts are?
Yeah, that's an exciting conversation. I think, hopefully we've got a couple hours to do this call, but yeah, we see a lot of different things, and the really cool thing about the area of the market that we attack is that we have a really good blueprint. We have industries and we have companies that have jumped out there and shown us, how to do this. And when Perpetua, we use the term digital, we mean data, right? So how do we enable companies to better leverage the true asset of their organizations in today's market, which is their data? How do we make that data fly better? How do we make it more exposable to the entire supply chain? So when you talk about companies that are doing digital transformation, they have to truly understand what that digital transformation means to them. That's the first thing, because not every customer is the same, right? They either have different channels to the market, they have different markets, they have different maturity. Frankly, if they're dealing with in a B2B world, that their customers may not be as digitally mature, their suppliers may not be as digitally mature. So they all start from different places in that maturity scale, and then understanding truly what digital means to them and how they embrace and utilize that data for their organization is really what we would call a digital transformation, what we see in the market.
So when you're advising C-level executives and the service that Perpetua provides, what is it that you hone in on in the very beginning to try to understand or to even try to advise them? What do you really try to focus in on when you're talking to these C-level executives?
Well, I think the first thing is getting a common definition, right? So, and getting almost an epiphany or realization where they are. So one of the things that I like to do is I kind of, I raise up my cell phone and say, every one of the newer members or this upcoming generation of workers that are going to come work for you, they have an expectation of the capabilities of your company, right? Are you even capable of attracting people to work in your organization that will be your next generation because of their expectations of how your company is supposed to operate? And then you start to have the discussion of, how they want to interact with the information they want to see. We do a lot of work in private equity, and one of the things that we tend to see is that they need data, right? Everybody needs this data. So the first conversations with the leaders of the organization, whether that be the ownership, whether that's private or private equity, or the leadership of the company, is how much data do you have at your disposal, right? And how much effort does it take to get to that data in order for you to truly see what it takes to run your company? And then how reliable do you feel like that data is, right? And so that's generally the first type of conversation that we have. And then where do they want to take their business from a strategy perspective? How do they want to attack new markets? How do they want to get to new customer bases? How are they taking new products to market? How are they trying to optimize their supply chain? How are they trying to diversify their product portfolio? How are they trying to optimize operations? All of those really are a function of what kind of data they need in order to make those decisions. And then you're right back at the same point, right? So really trying to generate a discussion about the business strategy and how they currently rely on data today and how they're going to need to rely on it going forward in order to be a relevant part of their supply chain.
The majority of the time when you start talking to that executive or that group of executives about that, typically do you find that they all will tell you on the front end that being competitive, having competitive advantages, and there's a interest in having a clean core and good data and all that sort of thing? Do you find that they're 7 out of 10, 9 out of 10, 5 out of 10 are interested in what you're talking about?
Interested is a great word, right? I think that there's a general interest from all parties to improve the business, whether that improvement is in a top line lift or whether it's an EBITDA improvement or what have you. I think there's a general interest always. I think that kind of the old moniker of IT, or the old perception of IT, is that we're technologists, right? We're propeller heads, we're systems people, and what we have to do is we have to come to the table with the mindset of being able to make them interested, right? We have to come from a business perspective. We have to talk about things like yield or value capture, or EBITDA, or new markets and market penetration. We have to be able to have those conversations with our customers too, in order to, or the executives, right? I'm using the word customer because I'm an outside party, in order to get their interest first, and then you've got a common point, and then you start to talk about the business strategy. So first is about getting the interest in the conversation, and then getting past that second step, getting past that perception of you're only approaching it from a system perspective. You're your typical IT person, right? And you're only talking about systems and this black box of things that goes on behind the scenes. And really, you want to start engaging that dialogue. And once you cross those first couple steps, then you can start. I think you start having that conversation at a deeper level about the business, and their interest peaks at that point.
It is interesting that so much of the time that we get brought in, and there's sometimes a battle between IT and the lieutenants that run IT and management and the business. And really, when you're looking at ERP software, and you're certainly looking today, if you're using SAP, they've got some really, really neat stuff that they've got cooking. And BTP is an example of, you can do things with BTP that'll save a customer millions of dollars. But the IT folks have a tendency in those. You've seen organizations where the IT feels like the world revolves around them, but it's really about the business. Have you seen that dynamic before?
I've seen it a time or two. Yeah, more that's one of the paradigms we hope to break, right? Is that thing that's been created around IT, and you see it, and it's amazing too, because you see it in the IT organization itself, right? And the people that you interact with, you see it on full display in the way that they utilize technology, and the technology they have in place that runs the business, right? And then you have it, it's kind of interesting, right? Because you see it all the way down to, I'm going to pick on my friends in private equity for a minute, is you even see it all the way down to how they think about what technology truly is with an organization, all the way down to their performers and investment hypotheses, that they use the term ERP, very freely, like it defines all of the technology that is used to run a business when that's only a segment of it, right? So getting on the same page with that next step, which the interests, you get past the old guard mentality, you have to take that all the way down to the ownership and understand their interpretations and their definitions about what IT truly is, because that definition of what they have potentially in that investment hypothesis or their pro forma or their financial statements or whatever may be drastically different than what you're putting in place today. And you see that with the emergence even of new accounting rules around, IFRS or FASB. I always get the regulation of the source, a little confused, but to the GL accounts, they're looking at software and software maintenance, where software subscriptions is the way of the emerging way of the future. So again, building that bridge is incredibly important. But yeah, we fight that perception all the time.
Well, and we run into the exact same thing. And what's difficult a lot of times is that, if the IT group has been the leader and they've been allowed to be the leader of all things that are used, tools, software, whatever it is, then that precedent is set. And so, a lot of times we find that, if they're say they're on an old instance of ECC and they're going to be moving to maybe the cloud, well, the IT has one view, executives have another. So we run into this quite a bit. Let me switch gears and ask this question. When you've gone through that process, visiting with the C-level executives, trying to understand what they want going forward, and do they understand what their various options are? I'm assuming that you've had some experience with SAP being the recommendation, for whatever it is that is applicable for them. You've encountered or you've been a part of SAP as a solution for some of these mid-size companies you service, correct?
Yes.
And what is the general thought of why you might have recommended SAP, or why you suggested that they continue with it in whatever's applicable? What would be the reasons that you've utilized in the past?
This isn't a small answer, right? It's not a short answer. Part of what we see in breaking these paradigms is you see this, like, I'll call this an accordion effect in the market with software providers. You get to this, we want to be able to expand across the business processes with depth in that certain business process or that capability, whether it's PLM or CRM or e-commerce or B2B commerce. We go all day on different types of modules per se. So organizations have reached, and they've created a more complicated infrastructure, a complicated set of application portfolios, which require more IT from an integration perspective and more management of those systems, which the company ultimately needs the data, and to make that data as real as possible. So when you start to look at these solutions in the market for our size companies that we deal with, again, in that same market, you start to try and get as much of that capability in one place as you can, right? In order to limit the amount of different places that data is stored across the business processes. So that if you take that approach, there are only a few companies that offer, or a few software products that offer that sort of breadth and depth, and you know who they are, and SAP is one of them. The challenge with SAP, and I did an article a few months ago about why SAP surprised us, so that's out there as well. But one of the challenges that SAP's had in this market is SAP's had this perception in the market that they've been, this huge monolith that they take forever to implement. It's extremely complex. It's not flexible and adaptable to the business. And I think that with the emergence of SaaS and HANA, that SAP's done a really good job making that more not only appealing but more consumable by the lower market companies, by the smaller companies. And they've really made a strategic approach in trying to get more of that portion of the market. And in addition, SAP's done a pretty good job in attracting, partners that live in that area of the market that understand the complexities that those size companies need or don't need, and really made it easier for those companies to adopt and consume that technology. So that's what I've seen as a trend. And if you consider, I don't need to get into the other names of the other software providers, but there's really only 3 or 4 that can play in that breadth and that depth and still be able to be flexible and adaptable and consumable enough for this area of the market. And SAP has definitely made that type of step.
And what we also find, Mike, is that whenever a customer, let's just say it's an existing customer on ECC 6, and they're having struggles making the decision to go to the cloud for whatever the reason is, what we try to educate them on is explaining to them that you can choose to grow with SAP as grow as it's something they sell, and that
Sure.
would allow you to grow your business from say 100 million to $1 billion, and not have to constantly do software upgrades, constantly have to add more hardware and all that sort of thing. And it would allow them to be more profitable longer. But the thing that we run it or quicker, the thing that we run into a lot is the biggest impediment seems to be if they have a tremendous amount of custom code that they're not going to be utilizing in this new environment. And can they let loose of it? Can they break free of all that customs code that they've had for years and years and years? That seems to be what we run into a lot, that they're not willing to, or it's a very difficult task for them to embark on. You've seen that?
Yeah, I've seen that, and honestly, one of my lesson learns in my career is I've actually been part of those types of organizations that bring that challenge upon themselves. And I think we kind of talked about those paradigms that you have to break as an IT organization. Well, you have to also break some of those paradigms as a company, right? And this is one of those conversations with the leaders of the company and potentially the owners, which is, what type of company are you? What is your business? Are you a software company, or are you a manufacturer, or are you a logistics company or a distributor, or whatever the core business that you're in, and understanding that the complexities and the investment required to own your own technology as well as develop your own technology. Because if you're living in a world where you're highly customized, by definition you are a software company. And understanding the discipline and the cost and investment and the type of people and the capabilities you need to be a software technology company will probably be prohibitive to you from a cost structure being a manufacturer, right? Now, I have seen that, regardless of what industry you're in, I've seen manufacturers that actually developed a piece of software that was good for a large portion of their customer base, and they have evolved the software product that they could potentially spin off and then eventually become a data company. I've seen that, right? So you also have to realize where those things happen and how you start to isolate those things and put those more to the side, and not as a cost of doing business, but potentially an investment in a different type of company or a different type of product. But yeah, you see it, and I think part of the realization is what type of company you are, and also understanding, you have to have good governance, understand how the decisions are made and whether or not you're going to invest in those things. You have to have an eye towards, organizational management and change management, and being able to get people to change, right? Because with digital transformation, with the emergence of SaaS, with all of these different capabilities that come out, people have to be able to change and be flexible as well. So it's not always adapting the software to the people. Sometimes it's adapting the people to the software, the technology. Sometimes adapting, like I said, the businesses to the technology. And there's always that spectrum in there, and you have to be able to go through the pros and cons, the costs and benefits of each of those types of scenarios.
That's great. Could agree more, Mike. And I have one more question for you. We could literally talk for a couple hours, and my head would just bob, but I'm sensitive to your time and our listeners' time as well. my question is this. I was talking to a gentleman that was one of the original architects of HANA, worked hand in hand with Hasso, which was really a cool conversation. But anyway,
Yeah.
he talked about that the life of the SAP users and sort of where they started in the early adopters and those that were gun ho to get out there. And he feels like that we're probably on the bell curve, probably at about a little over 50% of the folks that are out there need an ERP solution. They have an ERP solution. They haven't, moved to the cloud, whatever it is. If you were advising someone, without giving away any of your secret sauce, if you were advising a customer today that, let's just say, was running an old instance of ECC, and we know that the support's going to stop here in a few years, or it's going to get real expensive, one of the two, what would be your advice to a C-level executive on the decision criteria, or what it is that they should probably focus on as most important that maybe they never have thought about or considered?
Wow. I don't know that I really have just blanket advice, but I do have a blanket perspective, because I don't know if those two things go hand in hand all the time. I don't always just lead with the opinion of what we think they should do. Um, Generally, I would say that your core operational system, right, is one that you need to make sure that you evolve consistently with the pace of your organization. So not to make it prohibitive, from a cost structure perspective. But understanding, the point that I made before about being able to understand what business you're in. That to me is the core ERP. The days of being able to squeeze, 10 and 15 and 20 points off of it, either installing or upgrading a core ERP. And those are the modules, that I would consider your order management, your inventory management, financials, and that core component of your operational business. Those days are over, right? So where are you getting your lift from these days? And SAP is broad enough to where you can go after your configurator, you can go after your commerce engine, you can go after your pricing engine, you can go after your CRM, you can go after your supply chain optimization, you can go after both your lift from a revenue perspective and your cost of sales efficiencies, as well as your cost of goods sold and your cost of doing business from a materials or product perspective. And that's where you need to get your bang. So we would start with that outside in perspective and how you basically communicate with that market. We are now beyond 3.0. So, if you follow industry 3.0 and 4.0, 3.0 was all about getting in your core ERP, getting your core operations running on a capability, optimizing your processes according to that ERP. Now we're in 4.0, industry 4.0, and that's about how you interact with the outside, right? Whether it's IoT or whether you're talking about passive, ordering through, EDI or eventually blockchain, and how you communicate with your suppliers and your customers and your distributors. So you have to invest in those outside. So I would say go to the next level with a mindset of which capabilities can cover as much of that breadth as possible, and then bring that core operational piece along with that journey, because you're going to have to fund it on the outsides. You can't fund it on the inside anymore using that same outside in mentality. So get your lift from how you optimize your supply chain, from how you attack new markets, from how you get customer lift or better velocity on your sales transactions, and all of those things. And that really should be funding, your move. And your core operational system, if you have it in place, I would just ask the question, why are you changing? Especially if you're already on SAP, go after that breadth from an outside in, and then bring that core operational piece along for the journey.
Well, that's fantastic, Mike. We so appreciate you joining us. I could listen to you talk for a couple hours, literally, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. And I know the folks that listen to this will gain some good tidbits from you. So thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon, Mike.
Thanks, Dan. Always a pleasure. Good to talk to you.